Hello, Nacho Knots, and welcome back to Nachos, the neuroaffirming conversation hour for outreach and support. I am glad that you are here. So remember, if your week has felt loud, confusing, or a little unreal, you are not alone. The world can feel like it's spinning faster than our nervous systems were designed to handle. So today, we're doing something simple and brave. We're going to take a deep breath, we're going to slow down, and we're going to search for a little meaning in the middle of all this noise. Because meaning does not always arrive as a grand revelation. Sometimes it shows up as a small moment of clarity, a gentle reframe, a line in a book, or a quote that helps us name what we've been feeling all along. Meaning can be a flashlight, not a floodlight, just enough to take the next step and to remember that we are still here, still human, still capable of kindness, curiosity, and repair. And that's why I want to start this episode with two lines from Albert Einstein that feel like they were written for a week like this one. The first is darkly funny, the kind of humor that makes you wince and laugh at the same time. He said, "Two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe." It is a little reminder that the chaos we see is not new. People have always been people. We've always been brilliant and baffling, compassionate and careless, capable of building wonders and repeating mistakes. If you're exhausted by the headlines or discouraged by what you see in others, you're allowed to feel that. You're allowed to smile at the absurdity and let that smile loosen the tightness in your chest, even if just a little. And then the second quote shifts us from the sigh to an invitation. Quote, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them," end quote. That is the mood I want to hold today. Not despair, possibility. Not pretending everything is fine, but refusing to stay trapped in the patterns that keep hurting us. If the world feels crazy, maybe the first step is not to match its intensity. Maybe the first step is to choose a different kind of thinking, a gentler kind, a more curious kind, a more human kind. So that's where we begin. In a strange world, we're going to look for meaning in this strange world. In a loud world, we're going to practice a little quieter wisdom. In a tired world, we're going to keep reaching for new ways to think, new ways to care, and new ways to come home to ourselves. And when Albert Einstein says we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that created them, I hear something deeply practical in that. It's not just about governments or institutions. It's about daily life, the way we talk to ourselves, the way we try to muscle through overwhelm, the way we treat our bodies like machines instead of living ecosystems that need rest, rhythm, and repair. If the problem was created by rushing, shaming, masking, overperforming, or going it alone, then the solution probably will not come from rushing harder, shaming ourselves more, masking better, performing louder, or isolating deeper. Sometimes the most radical move is to stop doubling down on what is not working. For a lot of us neurodivergent folks, the same thinking looks like this. I should be able to handle this. I should not need help. I should just push through. I shouldn't be so sensitive. I shouldn't be this tired. But that's not wisdom. That is a script that you were given. And scripts do not care if you are hurting. Scripts are efficient, but not compassionate. So maybe this week we practiced a different kind of thinking, the kind that asks, what do I need right now to stay regulated? What would it look like to make this moment safer for my nervous system? What is one small accommodation I can offer myself without asking permission? And that's where the first quote helps too, because it gives us a little emotional distance. The world will do what the world does. People will sometimes be breathtakingly wise and other times astonishingly reckless. If you're feeling disillusion, it does not mean you're broken. It may mean that you're paying attention. It may mean you care. It may mean you are awake to the gap between what could be and what we often choose. And there's grief in that. But there's also a kind of clarity. You don't have to romanticize the world to find your place in it. So here's a gentle invitation for this episode. Let us look for meaning that is sturdy, not sentimental. Meaning that can survive disappointment. Meaning that does not depend on everyone else suddenly becoming reasonable. Meaning that is built from values you can actually live. Compassion, honesty, boundaries, community, humor, patience, repair. If the world is chaotic, we do not need to become chaotic with it. We can become anchored. We can become intentional. We can become the kind of people we wish we had more of. And if you're listening today feeling depleted, I want you to hear this clearly. Searching for meaning does not require you to be inspirational. You don't have to turn your pain into a lesson on demand. Sometimes meaning is simply naming what is true. I am overwhelmed. I am trying. I need a break. I need someone safe. I need to start again. And that's not weakness. That's a nervous system that is begging for care. That's a human being refusing to disappear. So as we move forward, let us hold both truths at once. Yes, the world can be absurd. Yes, the people in it can be maddening. And also, yes, we can choose a different way of thinking. One that makes room for regulation, dignity, and connection. One that does not solve problems by creating new ones inside of our own bodies. One that remembers that we are allowed to be soft in a hard world. And we're allowed to keep looking for meaning anyway. So as we pivot from meaning in this messy world to the meaning we can actually create, this is a good moment to remind everyone about your midterm project, which is due at the end of this month. I want you to hear this part with calm, steady energy. This is not meant to be a gotcha assignment. It is a chance to practice something powerful, taking what you believe matters and shaping it into something that can teach, can connect, and can endure. At the heart of the midterm is your created holiday. The holiday itself is important, yes, but what matters most is the purpose underneath it. In other words, don't get stuck thinking you need the perfect name, the perfect logo, or the most elaborate tradition. The real core is this. What are you trying to teach with this holiday? What is the lesson, the value, the skill, or the truth you want people to carry forward after this day is over? If your holiday is a message, what is it saying? And that leads right into the biggest question of all. Why does this holiday matter to us? Why does it deserve a place on the calendar? What problem does it respond to? What gap does it fill? What goodness does it protect? What kind of world does it help us build? If you can explain the why with clarity and heart, the rest of the project tends to fall into place because your traditions and rituals will naturally grow out of that meaning. One more important logistical note, because I want your work to stay yours. For this midterm, you will not upload a file. Instead, you're going to share access to your document or your video with me. And this is intentional. It helps protect your intellectual property and ensures you keep control of your ideas and your work. You are the author. You retain ownership. Sharing access lets me read and give feedback without you handing your work over to a system in a way that can feel like you are losing control of it. So as you keep working, focus on the heart of it. Build a holiday that teaches something real and anchor it in a why that feels honest. And for this week's participation, I want to check in and make sure everyone is on a solid path. What questions, what concerns, or what roadblocks do you have about the midterm holiday project right now? If you're feeling confident and everything is clear, you can simply respond with a not applicable NA, right? Nothing here. I feel good about my plan, or share a quick note about what you are working on. But either way, please post something so that I can see where you are and make sure everyone is supported as we head toward the end of the month deadline. You can drop your response right here in the YouTube chat or comments if you're watching there, or wherever you listen to the podcast. Just make sure it is posted in the weekly participation spot, right, in the comments section, so that I can find it easily. So again, the question is, what questions, concerns, or roadblocks do you have about the midterm holiday project right now? If you're feeling confident, you can simply say, I feel good about my plan, or you can share a quick note of what you're working on. So as a quick timeline reminder, your holiday midterm project is due right before spring break. And that is intentional. I don't want you carrying this over into the week that you are trying to rest. It will cloud your head. I want you to finish strong, turn it in, and then actually have some space to breathe. Think of it like closing one chapter before we step into the next. Spring break at its best is more than time off. It's an academic ritual, a pause built into the year on purpose. In the same way your body needs sleep, your mind needs a reset point too. Spring break is the calendar admitting something true. Learning is not just about effort, it's also about recovery. You do not grow by pushing nonstop. You grow by alternating between focus and restoration, work and release. And that's why spring break matters. Even if you're busy, even if you're working a job, even if life does not magically slow down, the point is not perfection. The point is renewal. It's a chance to clear some mental tabs, to step back from constant deadlines, to let your nervous system unclench a little, and to come back with more capacity than you had before. It's a reminder that rest is not a reward you earn after you've proven that you are worthy. It's part of what makes you able to learn and function at all. So as we head toward the break, I want you to treat it like a reset button, not just an interruption. Finish your project, hand it off, and then give yourself permission to refill. The world will still be loud when you return, and your responsibilities will still exist, but you will be coming back with a little bit more space inside of yourself. And that's the goal. Not to be a different person, but to return to your own life with more steadiness, more clarity, and more capacity. And here's the deeper point I want you to sit with. Cycles are built into our institutions, whether we notice them or not. The semester itself is a cycle, a beginning, a ramp up, a stretch of intensity, a midpoint checkpoint, and then a pause before the next climb. Deadlines create rhythm, weekends create rhythm, even the way classes meet, the way assignments repeat, the way that grades close at certain points, Thursday night for us. All of this is a patterned way of managing human energy over time. We often talk about school like it's the only system, like it's only a system of information, but it's also a system of timing. It's an organized relationship between effort and rest. Most of the time, we move through those cycles without naming them. We just feel the pressure rise, then the relief, then the pressure again. But when you start to notice the pattern, you can use it. You can plan around it. You can stop interpreting your mid-semester exhaustion as personal failure and start recognizing it as predictable phase. You can say, of course I'm tired. The cycle's at an intense point. You can stop thinking, what is wrong with me? And start asking, what part of the rhythm am I in? And what support do I need in this particular stretch? This is one of the reasons spring break matters. It's not random. It's a culturally approved pause in the middle of a long sprint. And we should celebrate that. It's the institution quietly acknowledging that human beings are not meant to operate at maximum output forever. And when we ignore that, we do not become heroic. We become depleted. So spring break is an invitation to practice something we do not get taught enough: recovery as a skill. Recovery is something you plan for, protect, and treat as part of success. So I want you to recognize the cycle and work with it instead of against it. Let the deadline help you focus, then let the break help you restore. If you can learn that rhythm here in this small, structured environment, you can carry it with you the rest of your life. Work cycles, family cycles, health cycles, creative cycles. The calendar is full of hidden rituals. When you start seeing them, you stop being surprised by the ups and downs, and you get better at meeting yourself with wisdom when the wave rises and when it finally mercifully falls. And honestly, this is one of the quiet miracles of being human. We do not just live inside of time, we shape it. We turn ordinary days into meaningful moments. We build rituals that say this matters, even when the universe keeps moving and the world stays complicated. A semester is not a natural law like gravity. It's something people invented to help other people learn. A spring break is not inevitable. It's a choice our culture made to protect recovery. These cycles are evidence that humans are not only workers or consumers or students. We are meaning makers. We design patterns that help us survive, connect, and remember who we are. Rituals do something that raw time cannot do. They create shared language. They let us mark transitions, beginnings, endings, losses, renewals, and return. Think about how many moments become bearable because they have a shape: a birthday, a holiday meal, a graduation, a memorial, a first day of class, a final day of class. Even small rituals count. The coffee before work, the playlist you always put on when you need to focus, the way you reset your space when you feel overwhelmed. These aren't just silly habits. They're human technology, and they tell your nervous system, we've done this before and we can do it again. And creativity lives in this too. We're constantly inventing ways to make life livable. We decorate, we tell stories, we create inside jokes and traditions and annual events. We build ceremonies out of nothing but intention. And that's art. That's culture. That is the human superpower. Taking the chaos of existence and turning it into something you can hold, something you can repeat, something you can share. Even when we're tired, even when we're grieving, we still reach for pattern, meaning, and rhythm because it helps us stay connected to ourselves and to each other. And that's why your holiday project is not just a quirky assignment. It's a practice in one of the most human things you can do: making a ritual that teaches, heals, or anchors the community. It is you stepping into the long tradition of people saying, we need a day for this. We need a reminder. We need a reset, a celebration, a pause. And when you create that, you're not just completing a midterm. You're participating in the creative work of being human, turning time into meaning and meaning into something we can live. And all of that brings us to a question sitting right at the edge of the human ritual and human creativity. When we make meaning, when we invent traditions, when we build holidays and stories and songs, what part of that is uniquely us? And what happens when a machine can generate something that looks creative on the surface? To answer this, we can look at science and publications. A recent large-scale study out of the University of Montreal takes that question seriously, not as a vague cultural debate, but as an experiment. The researchers asked in plain terms whether today's AI systems can score well on the same kinds of creativity tests that humans take, and what those scores actually mean. And here is the basic idea. They compared the performance of several major AI models with a very large human data set, using a well-known measure called the divergent association task. In this task, you're asked to list 10 words that are unrelated to each other as possible. The scoring is based on how far apart the words are in meaning. The more unexpectedly distant the words are from each other, the higher the score. To push the comparison beyond just word lists, the researchers also looked at creative writing tasks like haiku, short story writing, and plot summaries. And they evaluated the results using consistent scoring approaches, what some of us in the business call writing rubrics. One of the most important details is that they also tested how much the results changed depending on how the AI is prompted and how much randomness is allowed in the output. That matters because it means AI creativity is not a fixed trait. It can rise or fall depending on the instructions given and the settings used. The headline result is that some of these AI systems can outperform the average human on certain narrow creativity measures, especially the ones that reward quick novelty in language. At the same time, when you compare AI to more highly creative humans, particularly the top slice of human scores, people still come out ahead, and the gap is clear at the high end. The pattern is basically this. AI can be excellent at producing divergent, surprising combinations, but the most creative humans still show something different and deeper when you look at the strongest human work. Now, here's where this connects to our bigger theme. The thing we have been circling all this episode about human creativity is not only the ability to generate something new, it's also the ability to make meaning. What Viktor Frankl calls logotherapy. And rituals are a perfect example of this. A ritual is not just output. It's not just words on a page or a clever concept. A ritual is intention plus values plus community. It has purpose. It has a why. It teaches something and it asks something of us. So yes, AI can help generate ideas quickly. It can brainstorm names, symbols, traditions, sample poems, mottos, and slogans, and many other pieces of creative project. But it can't decide what matters to us. It can't feel the weight of what a community has lived through. It can't carry a lived memory of loss and love and resilience and then shape a holiday around that. That deciding. That choosing, that meaning making is the most human part. So yes, AI can help generate ideas quickly. It can brainstorm all of those things, but it cannot tell us what matters. It cannot tell us how love is defined, how life is defined. And once you sit with that, it's a short step to an even bigger question that scientists are treating as urgent and not theoretical. What does it mean to have a human conscience? What happens if our technology races ahead of our ability to recognize consciousness when it appears? And this was a recent review that was summarized by Science Daily, and it argued that the advances in AI and neurotechnology are moving faster than our understanding of consciousness, and that gap could set us up for ethical mistakes we're not ready to handle. And here's the idea in everyday terms. The authors are not claiming there's a single perfect consciousness detector. They're saying we need careful, evidence-based ways to evaluate consciousness because we're already facing situations where the answers matter. There are patients who cannot communicate in typical ways, but may still have answers. There are animals whose inner lives we may underestimate. There are lab-grown brain-like systems, sometimes called brain organoids, that are becoming more complex over time and could eventually raise difficult questions. And there are AI systems that can increasingly mimic human-like behavior, which can tempt people to confuse convincing output with genuine inner experience. The point is not panic. The point is preparation. What makes this connect so cleanly to our theme today is that consciousness is not just a scientific puzzle. It's the foundation of what we mean when we say human. It's the difference between output and experience, between producing words and feeling their weight, between describing grief and actually carrying it, between generating a story about love and having a nervous system that remembers love. So when we talk about AI and creativity, this review widens the frame and says, the deepest question is not only whether a system can create something that looks creative, the deeper question is what it means to have an inner life at all and how we would responsibly recognize it. The review emphasizes why this is so hard. Scientists still debate which brain processes are necessary for consciousness, how subjective experience arises, and even which theory of consciousness is most accurate. So in Science Daily, the authors highlighted these competing frameworks and argued that research needs to become more coordinated and more rigorous, including approaches where researchers from different camps design fair tests together instead of talking past each other. One of the lead authors, Axel Clearmans at the Free University of Brussels, stresses that if we ever become capable of creating consciousness, even unintentionally, the ethical stakes become enormous. And this is where it lands for us in a very grounded way. Our rituals, our cycles, our holidays, our stories, our classrooms, our communities, these are not just clever patterns. They're ways that conscious beings take care of conscious beings. They are the ways we recognize each other's inner lives and say, you matter, your experience counts, you belong here, and you deserve dignity. If technology keeps getting more powerful, then the most human skill is not only innovation, it is wisdom. It is learning how to hold moral boundaries, how to update our thinking when the world changes, and how to protect the sacred truth that experience is not a performance. It is a life. And that's the part that humbles me every time. We're still scratching the surface. We've made stunning progress in science and technology, and yet so much of what matters most remains mysterious. Consciousness, meaning, creativity, the way a memory can ache in the body, the way hope can return after it's gone for a long time. We can measure 1,000 signals and still not fully explain the feeling of being alive inside your own mind. And when you realize that, it changes how you hear confident voices. Because the world's full of assured answers. People speak with certainty because certainty sells. Certainty gets likes. Certainty ends the conversation quickly. But certainty can also become a kind of mask, a way to avoid the discomfort of complexity, the vulnerability of I don't know, and the humility of admitting we might be wrong. And in a time when technology can generate fluent, persuasive language on demand, we have to be even more careful. It's easier than ever to sound certain. It is still rare to be wise. The truth is, we are still becoming, as individuals and as a species. We're still discovering how minds work, how communities heal, how to build institutions that actually protect people instead of grinding them down. We're still learning how to live with tools powerful enough to reshape our culture faster than our ethics can keep up. We're still learning what kind of questions we should be asking in the first place. So if you feel unsettled by that, it doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're awake to reality. So maybe the posture we practice today is not cynicism and not blind optimism either. Maybe it's a curiosity with humility, a willingness to say, here's what we know so far, and here is what we are still trying to understand. A willingness to hold room for new evidence, new experiences, new voices, and new perspectives, especially the ones that complicate the neat story we want to tell, is not a weakness. It's intellectual honesty. It's emotional maturity. It's how real learning happens. And I want to name something important here. Not sure does not mean anything goes. Curiosity is not the same as confusion, and humility is not the same as surrendering your values. You can be deeply committed to dignity, compassion, and justice while still admitting you do not have the university fully mapped. In fact, that combination is part of what makes someone safe to trust. They're grounded in values, open in mind, and honest about the limits of their certainty. So this week, if you catch yourself craving a final answer, a clean conclusion, a perfect explanation. Just notice that craving with gentleness. It's a human response to uncertainty. And then invite yourself back into the more sustainable truth. We're still discovering, still learning, still becoming. And in a world that rewards loud certainty, choosing to stay curious might be one of the most human, most courageous things that we can do. And that brings us back to one more line from Albert Einstein that fits almost too perfectly with what we've been holding today. The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. Now again, the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. Because if knowledge is what we have collected so far, imagination is what lets us reach beyond it. Knowledge is the map we've drawn. Imagination is the part of us that says there might be a coastline we have yet to see. And I'm willing to explore to see it. This is where humanity lives. We're not only creatures who store facts, we're creatures who ask why, who wonder what if, who look at what is broken and picture what could be. Curiosity is the spark, imagination is the bridge, and both are rooted in something, the same humble truth. We do not know everything, so we keep reaching. We keep experimenting. We keep revising. We keep listening. We keep becoming. And imagination is not childish. It's not a luxury. It's a survival tool. It's how we create rituals that help us endure hard seasons. It's how we make community when we feel alone. It's how we build kinder systems when the old ones keep failing people. It's how we practice empathy, the ability to imagine another person's inner world even when it's different from our own. Knowledge can tell you what happened. Imagination helps you understand what it felt like and what it might take to repair it. This also ties directly into our conversation about AI. Machines can generate information. They can remix patterns. They can produce language that looks polished and confident. But the human work is still the work of imagination in the deepest sense. Deciding what matters, envisioning what should be, and carrying values into action. Imagination is not only creativity, it's conscience. It's the ability to see a person as more than a problem to be solved. It's the ability to treat a life as sacred, not just as a set of behaviors. So when Einstein says the true sign of intelligence is imagination, I hear a call to stay open, to remain curious, to resist the temptation to act like we have arrived at all of the final answers, to hold our knowledge with humility and our imagination with courage. Because in a world that is loud with certainty and crowded with information, the most human kind of intelligence might be the one that keeps wondering, keeps creating, keeps caring, and keeps looking for the next better way to live together. So as we bring this episode in for a landing, I want to name what we've really been doing together today. We started with the feeling that the world can be confusing, chaotic, and at times painfully absurd. We let ourselves acknowledge that without judgment. We named it. And then instead of stopping at frustration, we shifted into something more sustainable, the search for meaning. Not meaning as a perfect answer, but meaning as a steady light, enough to help us choose the next step. We explored how cycles and rituals are woven into the fabric of our lives and our institutions, often without us noticing. Semesters, deadlines, breaks, beginnings, and endings, these are not random. They're human. They're designed rhythms that help us imagine and manage effort, and imagine and manage restoration. When we learn to see these patterns, we stop treating our exhaustion or our overwhelm as a personal flaw and start understanding it as part of the larger rhythm. That awareness can be protective. It can help us plan, pace, and practice recovery as a real skill. From there, we stepped into the edge of the modern moment and what happens when AI can generate language, ideas, and creative-looking outputs quickly and convincingly. The takeaway was not fear. It was not running for the hills, and it was not hype. It was discernment. AI can help us explore options, but it cannot replace the most human part of creativity, the meaning making, the choosing, the ability to hold lived experience, values, grief, love, and resilience, and then shape something that serves real people in a real community. We also widen the lens to the questions of consciousness and how much we still do not understand about that topic. And that brought us to a necessary humility that we are still becoming, still discovering, still learning. In a world that rewards confident and assured answers, today was an invitation to practice a different posture. Curiosity with a backbone, humility with values, a willingness to say, here's what we know so far, and here's what we still need to understand without collapsing into cynicism or confusion. And that's where Einstein's reminder lands like a compass. The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. Not imagination as fantasy, but imagination as the capacity to envision what could be better, to empathize with lives we have not lived, to design rituals that restore us, and to build systems that treat people with dignity. Knowledge matters, but imagination is what carries us forward when the map ends. So where do we go from here? We go forward a little more awake. We practice noticing the rhythms around us and carrying ourselves inside them. We use our tools wisely without surrendering our humanity to them. We question overconfidence, especially our own overconfidence, and we stay open to learning. We treat curiosity as a form of care, a way of honoring complexity instead of trying to crush it into a slogan. And if you need one simple next step, let it be this. Choose one place this week to trade certainty for curiosity. One moment where you pause before the snap judgment, the self-criticism, the assumption, the hard conclusion. Ask a better question. Make a little room for possibility, that small practice, that gentle openness. That's how meaning is made. That's how we stay more human. Before we close out, though, a gentle reminder that helps keep this work moving and helps the community find it. If this episode gave you something useful, please follow, like, and share Nachos wherever you listen. Send it to a friend, post it to your story, or drop it in a group chat where you know someone is trying to make sense of this world with a tired nervous system and a good heart. Little actions like that make a bigger difference than people realize. And if you're able, this is also a good moment to support our Autism Awareness Month programming through the Humanities 101 Foundation. We're actively meeting with national grocery chains about hosting lunch and learns, and we'll even be attending events at local universities, including the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And that kind of programming takes planning, materials, travel, and time, and your support helps us show up with care and quality. If giving is not possible right now, sharing the work is also a real form of support. I also want to name something personal because I think it matters for how we understand progress. A little over 2 years ago, when I started Humanities 101 and Nachos, I set a goal for myself. I wanted to build my nonprofit work alongside the same kinds of organizations I partnered with in my life as a college administrator, department chair, and honors college director. I wanted to bring that level of credibility and collaboration into this mission, into this work, and to do it as myself with all the values and lived experience that brought me here, unapologetically. So getting a call from the University of Michigan about April programming feels like a culmination. And yes, we've spoken at Yale and other prestigious places, but I'm grateful for those opportunities, but this one hits differently. This one feels like a personal win. It feels like proof that steady work, relationship building, and staying anchored to the mission can open doors that used to feel far away. So thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for listening, for sharing, for supporting, and for helping us build something that keeps growing. We will keep showing up, keep staying curious, keep choosing imagination and dignity, and keep making room for a more human world. Before you go, I want to offer an affirmation in what we explored today. And I want it to feel personal to you right where you are. If this episode stirred something in you, if you've been carrying uncertainty, fatigue, or quiet pressure to have everything figured out, let this be the soft place to land. Let these words connect back to your own life, your own week, and your own nervous system. I honor the limits of what I know, and I do not mistake uncertainty for failure, because we're still scratching the surface of understanding, even in the most advanced fields. The world is complex and your mind is complex, and it's not weakness to have unanswered questions. It's honesty. It's maturity. When you feel unsure, you are not broken. You are participating in the real human condition, learning in motion, living without complete certainty, and still showing up anyway. I choose curiosity over performative certainty, because confident voices are loud and certainty can feel like safety, but it is not the same as wisdom. Today, we reminded ourselves that the most dangerous mistakes often come from people who cannot tolerate "I don't know." Curiosity keeps you flexible. It keeps you humble. It keeps you teachable. Curiosity helps you pause and ask a better question before you blame yourself, before you blame someone else, and before you lock yourself into a story that cannot grow. I make room for imagination because imagination is how I grow, connect, and repair. Because knowledge is important, but imagination is what carries knowledge forward. Imagination is what helps you picture a life that is gentler than the one you have been surviving. It's what lets you envision a different ending to a hard chapter. It's what helps you empathize with someone whose experience is different from yours. It's what turns a calendar into a ritual, a routine into refuge, and a community into a place where people can breathe again. Imagination's not childish. It's courageous. It's the mind reaching towards possibility. I remember that creativity is more than output. It is meaning, intention, and care. Because we talked about how tools can generate ideas quickly, but they cannot decide what matters. They cannot hold lived experience in their hands and treat it gently. But you can. Your creativity is not measured only by novelty. It's measured by purpose, by what you're trying to teach, protect, heal, or celebrate. When you create with intention, you're doing something deeply human. You're shaping the world not just to be interesting, but to be kinder. I work with the cycles around me instead of fighting my own humanity. Because rest is not reward. It's a requirement. The semester has phases, your energy has phases, your focus has phases. You're not meant to sprint forever. When you notice the rhythm, you can plan for it. You can build in recovery. You can treat breaks as renewal instead of guilt. You can stop calling yourself lazy for needing what every human nervous system needs. This week, you're allowed to live like a person, not like a machine. I trust that meaning can be built in small, steady ways, and I'm allowed to take the next step without having the whole map. Because meaning is often a flashlight, not a floodlight. You do not need perfect clarity to move forward. You need enough clarity to choose the next kind step, the next honest conversation, the next boundary, the next rest, the next attempt. Progress does not require you to be fearless. Progress requires you to keep going gently, consistently, and with your values intact. I am still discovering, still learning, still becoming, and that is not a weakness. That is a sign of life. Because becoming is what humans do. We evolve, we revise, we grow. We relearn ourselves in new seasons. If you've outgrown an old answer, that's not failure. That's growth. If you're changing your mind, that is not inconsistency. That is learning. If you're still trying to figure it out, that is not being behind. That is being alive. And here's a brief connection back to you specifically. Wherever you're listening from, whatever you're carrying into this week, you're allowed to be unfinished and still worthy. You're allowed to be unsure and still intelligent. You're allowed to need rest and still be ambitious. Stay curious. Stay gentle. Keep imagining. The world may be strange, but your humanity is not a problem to solve. It's something to honor. And with that, Nacho Knots, we're going to close this episode right here. Take a breath, take what you need and leave the rest. But keep your curiosity close. Keep your imagination alive and be gentle with yourself as you move through this week. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, this has been Nachos, the Neuroaffirming Conversation Hour for Outreach and Support. Be safe, be kind, and remember, you're still learning, still becoming, and you belong here.
Thank you for joining us. See you next week. The views and opinions expressed in this video are solely those of the creator and do not reflect the views of any institution, employer, or affiliated organization.